The Night the Stars Whispered. Dreamweave tales for those seeking hope, peace, and the warmth of nature. In a quiet little town surrounded by mountains and forests, there lived a boy named Liam. His heart had been heavy for a long time. Things hadn't been easy. School felt like a storm. His dreams felt distant, and each morning felt harder than the last. One evening, his grandfather came to visit. He handed Liam an old backpack and said softly, "Tomorrow we're going camping, just the two of us. Sometimes the forest can heal what the world forgets." The next day, they hiked into the heart of the forest. The path was winding, the air smelled of pine and earth, and the only sounds were birds calling and the crunch of leaves under their boots. With every step, Liam felt a little lighter. They set up camp beside a calm, shimmering lake. The water reflected the sky like a mirror. As the sun dipped behind the trees, the world turned gold. They cooked a simple meal, sat by the fire, and listened, not to music, not to words, but to the gentle sounds of the wild. Later that night, wrapped in a blanket beneath the open sky, Liam looked up. Thousands of stars blinked above him. It was as if the universe was breathing, alive and peaceful. "Grandpa, do you think things can really get better?" he whispered. His grandfather smiled gently. "The stars have been here for millions of years, through storms, fires, and darkness, and still they shine. You will too, Liam. You're not meant to give up. You're meant to grow. And nature reminds us, even after the coldest winters, spring always comes." Liam felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: quiet hope. As the fire crackled and the forest whispered around them, he closed his eyes, not with fear or sorrow, but with a heart slowly starting to believe again. That night, the stars didn't just shine. They whispered, "You are not alone. The world still has beauty, and so do you." So, dear dreamer, if your heart feels tired, remember the forest, the stars, and the truth they hold. You are stronger than your sadness. You are still becoming, and the light always returns. Good night. The Firefly Promise, a bedtime camping story about healing, memory, and hope. On the edge of a quiet forest, nestled between tall pines and soft moss, a girl named Ilara zipped open her sleeping bag and sighed. She was camping with her aunt for the weekend, far away from city lights, school noise, and the memories she didn't want to carry anymore. It had been almost a year since her best friend, Mira, had moved far away, and even though Ilara smiled during the day, at night her heart still ached. The forest around her whispered with life. Crickets chirped, owls called gently from the trees, and a breeze rustled through the leaves like a lullaby. But Ilara couldn't sleep. She stepped out of the tent, barefoot in the cool grass, and wandered toward the clearing by the trees. And that's when she saw them. Tiny golden lights blinking in and out, dancing through the air. Fireflies, dozens of them, flickering like little stars come down to earth. She gasped softly. She hadn't seen fireflies since she was little, not since that night when she and Mira promised they'd always find each other again, even if they were far apart. "If we ever get lost," Mira had whispered back then, "we'll follow the fireflies." Now, here they were, and as if they heard her thoughts, the fireflies began drifting toward the trees, glowing slowly, almost like they wanted her to follow. Without thinking, Ilara stepped gently through the forest, guided only by their soft light. The air smelled of pine and earth, and the fireflies floated ahead like little lanterns. They led her to a quiet clearing she hadn't seen before. In the center stood a smooth, flat rock surrounded by ferns and wildflowers. The fireflies circled above it, forming a gentle spiral in the air. Ilara sat down, heart calm for the first time in weeks. Above her, the stars shimmered. The forest hushed, and in that stillness, she felt it. A warmth inside her chest, a soft, quiet knowing that even though people change and things fall apart, love doesn't just vanish. It lingers, like fireflies in the night, like memories that light the way forward. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I miss you, Mira, but I'm okay. I really am." And just like that, the fireflies slowly began to rise, higher and higher, until they melted into the stars above. Ilara walked back to camp, not feeling empty, but full. Full of light, full of peace, full of a quiet promise. And so, dear dreamer, if you ever feel lost in the dark, look for the lights that still blink in your heart. Memories, love, hope. They're always there, waiting to guide you home. Good night. The Silent Mountain, a calming bedtime story about self-worth, patience, and the quiet strength of nature. High in the northern woods, where the air grows thin and the trees stand tall, there was a mountain that everyone in the nearby village simply called the Silent One. It had no trails, no signs, and no fame. But those who climbed it said something strange always happened near its peak. The world became quiet. Not empty, not lonely, just peaceful. Luca, a 13-year-old boy who always felt out of place, had heard the story from his father. So when summer came and everything in life felt too loud, the pressure, the expectations, the questions he didn't know how to answer, his father took him camping near the base of the Silent One. They pitched their tent just before sunset. The sky turned golden, then lavender, then deep blue. A campfire crackled beside them, and the mountain towered silently in the distance. "Tomorrow," his father said with a smile, "we'll climb it. No rush. Just you, me, and the sky." That night, Luca stared at the stars through the roof of the tent. He whispered to himself, "Why do I feel like I'm not good at anything?" The next morning, they started their hike. The forest wrapped around them like a quiet guardian. Birds chirped in the distance, and the earth smelled rich and ancient. They didn't speak much. Luca's legs ached. His thoughts swirled. He compared himself to others. He wondered if he was enough. He wondered if his quietness made him invisible. But the mountain didn't ask anything of him. It just stood, strong, still, and patient. Hours passed. The trees thinned. The wind grew cooler, until finally they reached the summit. The world opened wide. Below them were rivers, hills, clouds moving slowly across the valley. Everything looked small and beautiful at the same time. Luca sat on a rock and closed his eyes. And then the silence came. Not a silence of loneliness, but a silence of belonging. He didn't need to prove anything. He didn't need to speak louder, be faster, or know all the answers. Up here, he just was, and that was enough. His father placed a hand on his shoulder and said softly, "Mountains don't shout to be heard. They just are, and that's what makes them strong." Luca smiled. For the first time in a long time, the noise inside his heart had quieted too. So if you've ever felt too quiet, too slow, or not enough, remember the mountain. It doesn't need to be loud to change the world. And neither do you. Good night. Little Tent That Could. A gentle bedtime story about quiet courage, self-worth, and the strength found in kindness. Once upon a time, tucked away in the corner of an old wooden cabin, lived a little camping tent. It was small, patched in several places, and a little faded from years of use. The other gear, the shiny new stove, the high-tech lanterns, and the big fancy tent often laughed quietly. "You're too small," they'd say. "You can't hold up in real weather. You're just old." The little tent didn't argue. It simply remembered all the nights it had stood beneath the stars. The laughter of children inside, the songs around the fire, the quiet moments when someone just needed shelter. But lately, it hadn't been chosen for any trips, and deep down, the little tent began to wonder, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm no use anymore. Then one evening, everything changed. A group of campers arrived at the cabin, soaked from unexpected rain and shivering from the cold. Their own tents had been blown over by strong winds on the hill nearby. There weren't enough shelters for everyone. The big new tent was already full. The other gear had no room to help. But the little tent still sat quietly in the corner. One young camper, a small girl with glasses fogged from the rain, saw it. She tugged on her mother's sleeve and said, "What about that one?" Her mother hesitated, but nodded. "Let's give it a try." They gently set up the old tent near the tree line. Its poles creaked, its fabric shivered in the wind, but it stood. Hour after hour, through thunder, wind, and rain, it stood. Inside, The little girl and her little brother huddled together. They told stories, giggled beneath blankets, and whispered dreams. And the little tent, small and old as it was, felt warmth growing inside it. It wasn't shiny, it wasn't big, but tonight, it mattered. When morning came, the storm had passed. The sky was soft with mist and birdsong. The campers stepped out, yawning and smiling. The little girl patted the tent and whispered, "Thank you. You're the bravest one here." The little tent didn't say anything, but deep in its seams, it beamed with quiet joy. So if you ever feel too small, too worn, or forgotten, remember the little tent. Even quiet things can be strong. Even old things still have purpose. And sometimes the world needs you most of all. Good night. Under the Meteor Rain. A bedtime camping story about healing from failure, letting go, and beginning again. There was a boy named Theo who once believed in magic, in dreams, in stars, and in himself. But life had been harsh lately. Plans failed, people left, and that soft light he used to carry inside had faded. So, when he heard about the meteor shower happening over Pine Ridge, he packed his old backpack, zipped up his hoodie, and hiked up the trail alone. No one knew where he was going, not even him. The trail was long and quiet. The sun dipped low behind the hills, and the wind whispered through the trees. By the time he reached the ridge, night had fallen, deep and dark, but not scary, just still. He laid down his sleeping bag in a meadow of tall grass. Above him, the sky stretched wide and endless. No city lights, no noise, just stars. Thousands of them. And then it began. One by one, streaks of silver light shot across the sky, meteors, falling fast, bright, silent, like the sky was letting go of everything it had carried too long. Theo stared upward, barely breathing. He remembered all the things he had lost, all the moments he thought he'd never recover from. And then a thought came softly, like a whisper in the wind. What if falling isn't the end? Each meteor that fell wasn't crashing. It was dancing, breaking free, becoming something else. Maybe, just maybe, it's okay to fall sometimes. Maybe it's not failure. Maybe it's a beginning. He closed his eyes, let the wind kiss his face, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel broken. He felt open. Not all better, not perfect, but ready to try again. So if you're lying awake tonight, thinking of what went wrong, remember the meteors. Even in falling, they shine. And you still have light to give. Your story isn't over. Good night. The Song of the River. A bedtime camping story about letting go, moving forward, and the quiet wisdom of nature. Once upon a time, two siblings, Kai and Nara, went camping deep in a forest valley where an ancient river carved its path through rocks and moss. They hadn't spoken much lately, not since the fight, not since the words that felt too big to take back. Their parents thought the trip would help, just the two of them, away from screens, noise, and everything that kept them apart. They set up camp beside the river. The water moved slowly at first, winding through stones with a soft, gurgling song. That night, after the fire faded and the stars blinked awake, Nara sat near the river's edge, hugging her knees. Kai joined her, a little hesitant, but quiet. Neither of them spoke. Instead, they listened. The river made a sound, not quite words, not quite music, but something peaceful, something alive. "Do you hear it?" Nara whispered. Kai nodded. He said, "It sounds like it's telling a story?" The water rushed over pebbles and branches, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, like it was remembering something long ago. And then Nara said softly, "Do you think the river ever gets tired of the things it carries?" Kai thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe, but it keeps flowing anyway." A long silence. Then Nara whispered, "I didn't mean what I said back then." Kai looked at the moving water, then back at her. He replied, "Me neither." They didn't cry. They didn't need to, because the river understood. It taught them that you don't have to hold on forever, that letting go doesn't mean forgetting, it means making room to flow again. They sat there for a long time, until the river's song became their quiet peace. And so, dear dreamer, if your heart is holding too much, if the past feels heavy, sit beside the river in your mind. Let its song remind you, you are allowed to let go. You are allowed to begin again. Good night. Campfire Letters. A bedtime camping story about connection, unseen kindness, and the healing power of shared stories. Deep in a quiet forest, nestled between two hills, there was a small, forgotten campsite. No road signs led to it, no maps marked it, but somehow people kept finding their way there. One summer, a boy named Jonah stumbled upon it while hiking alone. He wasn't running from something. He just didn't know what he was running toward. He set up his tent beneath a crooked pine and built a small fire. As he gathered dry twigs from the woods, his boot hit something buried in the leaves. It was a rusted tin box. Curious, Jonah opened it. Inside were papers, folded, worn, some smudged by time and rain. They were letters, each one handwritten, each one signed only with a first name or sometimes just a symbol. Jonah sat by the fire and read them, one by one. "To whoever finds this, I came here after I lost everything. I didn't think I'd smile again, but the trees listened. Leela. I came here angry, left here softer. Thank you, fire. Drew." If you're reading this, I hope you know you're not the only one who hurts quietly. A friend. Jonah read until the fire turned to embers, and something inside him, something heavy, began to loosen. These weren't perfect people. They didn't have answers, but they had been here, and they had felt what he felt. He pulled out his notebook and wrote, "Dear future camper, if you're feeling lost, you're not broken, you're growing. It's okay to not know who you are yet. Just keep walking. This fire has warmed us both now. Shuna Jonah." He folded the page, placed it gently in the tin, and buried it beneath the pine again. As the wind rustled through the leaves, he whispered, "Thank you for waiting for me." And for the first time in a long time, Jonah didn't feel alone. So, dear dreamer, if your heart feels heavy tonight, remember, someone out there has felt the same, and someone out there is quietly wishing you peace. We are more connected than we know. Good night, Moon. A Pillow of Stars. A bedtime camping story about loneliness, love remembered, and the quiet reminder that we are never truly alone. Jules lay alone in his sleeping bag, deep in the middle of a wide, quiet meadow. He had camped here before, with his mom, his brother, and even his dog Max. But this time, they were all somewhere else, busy, far away, or gone. The silence felt bigger than the sky. He pulled the blanket over his head and whispered to himself, "No one even knows I'm here." Above him, the stars began to shimmer. And then, almost as if the sky had heard him, a breeze stirred the grass around him, soft and slow. He peeked out from under his blanket and looked up. The stars were brighter than he'd ever seen. One flickered, then another, then another. Soon, the sky above seemed to dance, stars blinking and sparkling like gentle eyes, like tiny voices calling out, not in words, but in feeling. And then, something strange happened. As Jules stared up, the stars seemed to take shape into faces he remembered. His grandmother's gentle smile, the eyes of his dog Max full of joy, the laughter of his little brother echoed in the wind. He blinked, and the faces faded back into starlight. But the feeling stayed. Warmth, connection, as if the stars were gently wrapping around him like a soft blanket, whispering, "We're still with you. You're never truly alone." He exhaled slow and deep, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. Just Jules, on a pillow of stars. So, if you ever lie awake, wondering if anyone sees you, look up. The stars remember. Love doesn't vanish. It simply changes shape. And even in your quietest moments, you are held. Good night. The Forest That Listened. A bedtime camping story about quiet souls feeling understood and the gentle language of nature. Mira was a girl of few words. She didn't like loud crowds. She didn't raise her hand in class. And when people asked her, "Why are you so quiet?" she never quite knew what to say. Sometimes she wondered, if I don't speak much, will anyone ever really know me? One weekend, her cousins invited her on a camping trip. They laughed, shouted, played tag through the woods. Mira smiled politely, but her heart felt distant. On the second morning, while everyone else was still sleeping in their tents, Mira woke up early and wandered into the trees. She didn't bring her phone. She didn't bring a flashlight, only herself and the hush of morning. The forest was quiet, not empty, but listening. The wind rustled gently through the leaves. A bird chirped once, then paused, like it was giving space. The sun filtered through the branches like golden threads. Mira sat on a mossy stone and breathed in. She thought of all the words she had never said, all the things she wished someone could understand, and then, without speaking, she began to feel something remarkable. The forest answered, not with words, but with a warmth in the air, a light breeze that brushed her cheek, a sudden flutter of petals falling from a nearby tree. It was as if the forest said, "I hear you, even in your silence." Mira sat there for a long while, not talking, not needing to, just being. When she returned to camp, her cousins greeted her with a loud, "Where were you?" She just smiled, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel strange or broken. She felt seen, even in her quiet. So if you've ever wondered whether your quiet matters, it does. Even silence carries truth. And somewhere, in nature, in dreams, in hearts, there is always someone listening. Good night.